Welcome to Locked On Lakers for a Thursday. Andy Kamenetsky with special guest Matt George from Locked On Kings. How do the Lakers and Kings stack up against each other and the rest of the Pacific Division? That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I don't know if divisions matter in basketball other than the fact that you're guaranteed to play your divisional opponent 4 times, 2 times at home and 2 times at away, but we're going to pretend that they matter here on the Locked On Podcast Network, starting a series of Pacific Division previews, and we got to start with, to one organization, it's always going to be a rivalry. To the other organization, it hasn't been a rivalry in over 20 years. We're talking about the Sacramento Kings and the Los Angeles Lakers. Happy to have Andy Kamenetsky, one of the great hosts of the Locked On Lakers podcast here with me, Matt George, for Locked On Kings. Andy, I'm sure you're aware by now, the schedule drops and the Kings and Lakers play each other 4 times in the first at least 32 games for the Sacramento Kings. It might be 32 or 33 for the LA Lakers, including back-to-back games against each other in Sacramento in December. So our teams are going to see each other quite a lot to open up this season and then not at all for the rest of the year. It's a bit of an interesting schedule.
So you start getting a very good idea from the Lakers' perspective about not just where they stand in the West, but how they stand in their particular division. A division, by the way, Matt, I'm curious what you think, but there's no such thing as an easy ride in the West because it's just too difficult. But right. As far as divisions go, I think the Pacific is the easiest in the West.
Oh,
they don't have any bad teams in the West. Like, I don't project necessarily anybody finishing below 40 wins. But as far as like the overall consensus of like seemingly the consensus top 4 teams in the West, I don't think the Pacific has any of them. So in that sense, I think the floor may be a little bit higher than some of the other divisions in the West, but the ceiling is lower.
It's interesting, Andy, because I coming into last season, I was saying that the Pacific Division, I thought the Pacific was the best division in the West, considering the fact that Kings had finally just made the playoffs, all the moves that the Phoenix Suns made in the offseason to become a super team. Of course, there's the Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, and their dynasty trying to get back to it. And then the Clippers at the time had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It's crazy a difference a year can make to where the Clippers, technically, record-wise, were the best team in the Western or in the Pacific Division last season. And I think the general consensus is that now that they've lost Paul George and Kawhi's never-ending rest days and injuries, that they're expected to be the worst. And then it's maybe a 4-team fight for the top. However, I think most people would naturally put Phoenix at number 1 in the Pacific. Are you in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement that would be the consensus. I'm not as sold on Phoenix as I think the general punditry is, again, acknowledging that I don't think any of them have Phoenix as a top 4 finish for the conference. They're seen as, I think, at best a dark horse champion, but I think they have, this may be some of my, I guess, purple and gold blood flowing through my heart, but I find it interesting that there is skepticism about the age and durability of LeBron and Anthony Davis for the Lakers, which, fair. I totally understand that. I have my own concerns. I've talked about that a lot on Locked On Lakers. The everydayers are perfectly aware. But I don't see as much towards Phoenix, despite the fact that there are definitely age and durability concerns with Kevin Durant, a lot with Bradley Beal.
Sure.
Devin Booker has had his share of recurrent soft tissue injuries. It feels to me like there's a benefit of the doubt being given to Phoenix that I don't see towards the Lakers that I find curious. I'm not going to get, at the end of the day, what all of us predict doesn't matter. You go play the games, but I find it interesting that Phoenix is being given, I think, more of a benefit of the doubt, despite having, I think, a lot of the same concerns.
I think the Pacific is interesting in the sense that the answer to the question of who's the best in the division versus who's most likely to win a championship in the division, I think those are two different answers. Like the best in the division, quote unquote, in which we're talking about the Pacific Division champions, the team that comes out at the end of the season and they're the best team in the division, end up with the highest seed in the Western Conference. I think a lot of people think that's going to be Phoenix. I think Sacramento is up there. In fact, I think it's the expectation, at least from betting sites, is that Phoenix and Sacramento might be the ones record-wise battling it out for the Pacific Division champions. But I still think a lot of people were to say, and some Kings fans might be mad at me for saying this, like if there's a team in the Pacific that's most likely to win a title, I think the Lakers still get that edge because of the LeBron James and the Anthony Davis, and they've been there and done that before as a group.
There's a real two-season question for the Lakers in terms of the regular season and the postseason. And, you know, there's been a lot of people talking about how great LeBron and Anthony Davis were in the Olympics and, you know, how LeBron was the MVP of the team. Anthony Davis was the best big. You know, they were two of, at worst, the four best players on Team USA. And, you know, the idea of you can still see how dominant those two can be as a tandem. They play really well off each other. And if the NBA was set up where you played like 3 or 4 weeks just to get everybody tuned up, then went straight into the playoffs, I think LeBron and Anthony Davis would have, and the Lakers would have as good a chance as any team in the league. The problem is you play 82 before you get to the playoffs. And that question of specifically, how do you manage LeBron for 82 games, you know, with him pushing 40 years old and 1 billion miles on the odometer, and some degree of concerns about Anthony Davis and durability, that's a very separate question. It's like the question of D'Angelo Russell. For all the concerns you have about him in the regular season, I mean, in the postseason, in the regular season, he's a really important part of the team that is not easily replaceable.
I want to dive into this a lot more. We'll start with one thing and then we'll talk about a little bit more later on. But I'm curious your opinion on this, because I actually view the Kings playing the Lakers 4 times early in the season as an advantage for Sacramento. And what I mean by that is you see a lot of these teams like the Lakers, like the Phoenix Suns. I think the Golden State Warriors to some extent. Some of these older teams where the torch has kind of been passed, I think, to the Anthony Edwards and the Nuggets of the world. Not that Steph and LeBron still aren't viable stars in the league, but I think the next generation is kind of taken over. But these are the teams that want to ramp up come April, May, and then go on to a championship run, where the Sacramento Kings can't afford to think that way, right? Even if the Kings think they're better than every other team in the Pacific Division, they have to hit the start of the season hard to build up a safety net for the dog days of the season when teams start to ramp up and maybe injuries pile up or they're just not playing as well. So I view the Kings playing the Lakers 4 times early as an advantage for Sacramento, because maybe you can kind of strike and go after the Lakers a little bit while they're ramping up. Do you agree with that? Do you feel the same way, or do you expect the Lakers to be a team that tries to hit the ground running hard?
Well, I agree with you that playing the Lakers 4 times is advantageous for Sacramento, just because Anthony Davis is 0 in his career against Domantas Sabonis.
I'm glad you pointed it out so I didn't have to.
I mean, it's funny. There's been so much focus on Anthony Davis versus Jokic because the Lakers have been knocked out of the playoffs twice by Denver 2 years running, and they've had little success against Denver in the regular season over the past few seasons. They've had, I think, a way worse time against Sacramento. Like, that matchup has been, and in particular, the Sabonis-Davis of it all, has been brutal for the Lakers. Where I don't agree with you, though, or at least maybe this is me wish casting, I don't think the Lakers should or even have the luxury of trying to hit the ground running, because the West is just too hard for, I think, any team that is looking to make serious business in the playoffs and wants to give themselves, if not the best seed possible, just try to avoid the play-in. I don't think you have the luxury of pacing yourself, but also the Lakers' early season, like October through the beginning of February, is much easier than February and beyond. So as much as there could be on paper that temptation to try to use that period to ease LeBron in, try to take as much load off him as possible. They need to bank wins in the first 3 months of the season, because from February and then especially the All-Star break on, it is brutal. Like their post-All-Star schedule, they've got like 5 games out of, I think, 28 against teams that there's a reasonable expectation that they could be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. The rest of them, the expectation is these are teams that are looking to be in the playoffs. It's brutally hard.
We're going to dive more into the Western Conference and where we feel the Kings and Lakers will both end up in just a second. Before that, though, I want to tell you about a great sponsor here of both the Locked On Kings podcast and the Locked On Lakers podcast. Great friend of the Locked On Podcast Network, eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's keep talking about the Western Conference, Andy, because it's a beast. And that was, I'm glad you brought it up, because we just talked about, hey, will the Lakers ease into the season a little bit? Will the Sacramento Kings have an advantage of playing them early on? Because the Kings have to hit the ground running. But really, every team in the West, this is a season where I'm expecting the 3rd or 4th seed and the 7th or 8th seed to be separated by only a handful of games. And a loss in November to Portland could end up killing you or be a massive difference maker. I think the tiebreaker scenario
and potentially devastating to Portland as well.
That's true. They're probably like, why did we win that game?
Yeah,
we need.
I mean, really, the Lakers do. I guess I talked about how they have a brutal post All-Star break schedule. They do have Portland as their final game, and I think there's at least a 50-50 chance Portland just forfeits. They don't even show up, just to make sure they don't accidentally bank a win.
See, that's the type of game that's going to piss somebody off, Andy, because whether it's the Kings or there's going to be a team that needs the Lakers to lose that game because of a tiebreaker scenario. And they're going to look at the schedule and see they're playing the Portland Trailblazers, and Portland needs to lose a game to secure the best odds at a number 1 overall pick in draft lottery. They're going to roll out. Chauncey Billups might even suit up and play just for the hell of it. They're going to roll out some kind of squad. Those are the games where
they can't do that. He's got too much bad beef with the Lakers because of the 2004 finals. You can't afford to potentially get Chauncey too fired up.
That's true. Chauncey might try and go out and win that. Chauncey might get himself ejected early just so he can have the night off with the rest of his players. But that's what's crazy about the West, right? It wasn't too long ago that we were having conversations does the regular season even matter? The regular season doesn't matter. Now there's so much parity in the league that 1 or 2 regular season losses can drop you down 4 or 6 spots in the West. It's absurd. There were I think 5 teams in the West that won 50 or more games last season. The Kings were a 46 win team. They missed out on the playoffs. The Pelicans were 1 or 2 games under 50 wins. They barely got in as an 8th seed and then got swept. The West is insane this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Lakers won 47 games and they were a 7th seed and had to battle their way against the Pelicans to get that 7th seed. Laker fans, because there's been, I'm not trying to lord this over the Kings, it's just the truth. There's been a ton of success with the Lakers franchise. I mean, it's honestly an embarrassment of riches. And especially, during Showtime or, Kobe's reign, a mentality had developed that the regular season doesn't matter. It's all about the playoffs. We don't care about what happens in the first 82. None of that matters. Either championship or go home. And it's if you want to maintain that as your ethos or, as far as your ultimate goals, that's fine. But a point I've stressed a lot to our listeners and our viewers is that the regular season actually matters a lot for the Lakers, because no matter how much you believe in LeBron and AD as a tandem, it's become clear just the idea of drop those two into the playoffs and we'll take our chances. No,
Sure.
It's not that simple anymore. Like, your seed matters. How difficult a draw that you have matters. Like, the Lakers getting Denver in the first round, had they played, had they managed to get themselves to a 6 seed, 5 seed, avoid the play-in altogether, I'm not saying they win a championship, but it's very clear they do not benefit from facing Denver. And as much as the series was close, they lost 4 games by a combined 22 points. They lost 2 of those games for what were, in all intents and purposes, buzzer beaters. Like, they played Denver legitimately they led like triple the minutes of that series. They played them legitimately well. Still ended up losing. That's on the Lakers. But point is, you get a different draw, your playoff fortune may completely turn on its head. Like, you can't just say, you know what, give us the 8th seed and we'll make it all happen. No. In a West this difficult, your seed matters.
The Kings are trying to not just get back to the playoffs. That's the bare minimum expectation in Sacramento, is get back there. But then the question becomes like, okay, how do you actually win a playoff series? And where seeding does matter, I don't think opponent really does for Sacramento at this point, because I think the general expectation is whatever way the Sacramento Kings make it into the postseason, unless DeMar DeRozan really comes in and makes a massive impact in Sacramento, which I think is possible, but people aren't necessarily expecting that. The Kings are going to be expected to be the underdog in whatever playoff series they're in, just because of their experience alone and just the way the roster is made up. Unless maybe they somehow get matched up against, I don't know, maybe the Warriors again. But even so, like Steph Curry's Warriors, I think would be expected to beat the Kings.
Too, I mean, I truly don't mean this disrespectfully, but in terms of being viewed as the underdog and like perception, they're the Kings factor. Like, they don't have the playoff pedigree.
Yep.
That even if you look at them on paper and say they're better than whoever they're playing, for example, if they match up against the Lakers based on what we've seen the last few years, there is every reason to believe the Kings should be favored until we see evidence otherwise. But I'm pretty willing to bet the consensus would have the Lakers, because Lakers versus Kings.
Yep. And LeBron, the LeBron James factor, the AD factor. I mean, it's kind of a conversation, which is good because we wanted to talk about it, of like star power versus roster. Now, the Sacramento Kings have star power in terms of Fox and Domantas Sabonis and the addition of DeMar DeRozan and stuff like that. But I think we believe the best version of the Sacramento Kings is a cohesive unit versus get on LeBron's back, get on Anthony Davis's back, and let them carry you as far as they can go. Now, I'm of the belief, Andy, because DeAaron Fox it's not technically a contract year for Fox, but he is eligible for the Supermax if he makes all NBA this season. So if there's a time for Fox to turn into the Jalen Brunson for his team or the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for his team, it's right now. And I think there's going to be a level to Fox's game that hopefully we see this year of, it's not that he can't, we've never seen him do it before. It's becoming undeniably the guy, undeniably the star, which that's something, of course, that LeBron and AD have become and been for their team. Fox has shown that, but hasn't been that for an entire season. That's the next step for the Sacramento Kings, in addition to winning 50 games and winning a playoff series, is one guy coming out and establishing themselves as the undeniable star of the team. I think that's going to be Fox, but we'll see if he does it this year with the first year of DeMar DeRozan.
Okay, I know I want to talk about DeRozan during the final segment, but what I think is interesting about what you said with Fox is whether or not you consider him, better than, say, just all-star, which is, to be clear, a very good player, like all-star caliber player. You're one of the top guys in the league, but like that superstar level guy, DeAaron Fox has proven he is a superstar in the fourth quarter. Like, at the very least, if your game is tight, he's like on the short list, like the small handful of best guys in the league to have there. Like, that has been proven out over and over. Maybe not in the biggest stage in terms of the playoffs, but it's very clear he's got a flair for that moment. And like those minutes, he reacts well to them. You combine that with DeMar DeRozan, who's also one of the best crunch time guys in the league. How that translates to the overall team remains to be seen. But you've got two guys on your team that have shown they can be absolute killers when the money's really on the line.
We're going to dive in. Let's talk about DeMar DeRozan. I mean, you can't not do it. We're going to talk about Bronny James a little bit as well, and then dive into where we expect.
I feel like you can. I feel like you actually can.
Oh, we can't. There's just one thing we need to know. I'm sure you're tired of talking about. We'll get into all that here in just a second. All right, Andy, you wanted to talk about DeMar DeRozan, so I want to hear your thoughts and either questions or whatever you want to talk about DeMar DeRozan, because this is an LA guy, Southern California guy, born and bred. I remember when the rumors and we heard the conversations of, hey, DeMar wants to come home. DeMar wants to come to California. I think it was the Lakers and Clippers fan bases that were fighting each other over which LA team he was going to pick. Then he ends up in Sacramento.
I'm curious what you think about just how much better does DeRozan really make him? Because he's still really good, and I think he's actually a really underrated playmaker. Like he's become this really effective point forward style guy. But I feel like in a lot of ways he triples down on what the Kings are just already really good at, with scoring, with crunch time scoring, with just offensive efficiency and punch, but doesn't really do much to shore up the weaknesses. I think spacing, like he becomes another guy who can score but doesn't space anything. And the defense of this team, particularly when you add him to that starting unit, playing 30-ish minutes a game, he feels like a guy that accentuates what they do really well, but doesn't really address some of the things that may have been holding him back.
For the most part, Andy, I think you're spot on, 100%. Because this is an offensive-minded move. It can't not be. Now, I had a conversation with...
Must be killing Mike Brown. It's got to be killing.
So that's part of the conversation, because I had a conversation with an NBA assistant coach who's worked with DeMar in the past, and he told me, like, look, DeMar DeRozan doesn't just address the offensive issues that the Kings had last season when they took a step back. He thinks that DeMar solves the Kings' main issue from 2 years ago, which is they had the best offense in the league that year. But if you took them out of their sets, right, they literally only had Fox to lean on and Fox to go out and get them a bucket. Nobody else. They wanted Keegan to be that guy. Keegan wasn't quite ready for it. They leaned on Harrison Barnes to be it, but Harrison Barnes is not efficient enough to be that guy. So now you have two guys in Fox and DeRozan that can simply just go out and get you a bucket. Plus, you add another mid-range threat. The spacing is a legitimate conversation, a legitimate concern. However, if you watch film of DeMar DeRozan, he does not need a lot of space to work, and the Kings' dribble handoff game will still open up opportunity for Fox to be more of a perimeter scorer. He's shot 37% on a high volume of threes now, so he can step out and space the floor a little bit better. So it's 100% an offensively driven move. But you brought up Mike Brown, and that's the interesting part, because the Kings also re-upped Mike. I think they absolutely had to do it. He's the best coach they've had since Rick Adelman was here. But Mike is the guy that's telling people, speaking to the media, speaking at press conferences, going, we can't be the Mike D'Antoni team. And he didn't use Mike by name, but I'm inserting Mike D'Antoni in here. You can't be a team that scores 130 points a night and just expect to win a title. You have to be able to play defense. The Kings made tremendous strides defensively towards the end of last season. But a lot of the Kings will tell you, and Mike Brown will tell you, a lot of that had to do with officiating.
I was going to say Harrison Barnes, losing him doesn't help the defense either.
Well, Harrison was not that great of a defender, but what Harrison was is he's long, and the Kings lack size and just traded
relative to the other guys. I mean, even I don't think he's a great defender. If he's still on the upper end, he's on the upper end.
Well, look, Harrison was the guy that when the Kings played the Lakers, you put Harrison on LeBron. Not that you were feeling great about it, but Harrison was that. Now it's Keegan Murray. That all that responsibility is on Keegan, and that's it. The Kings replaced a 6'8", 6'9" guy with a 6'6" guy in DeMar DeRozan. So 100%, I think this is the Kings, even with Mike Brown, and he had to be on board because he loves DeRozan too. But even with Mike Brown and his defensive mentality, this is the Sacramento Kings, like you said, tripling down on, look, the only way we're going to be the best version of ourselves is if offensively we are unstoppable every night. If we could have a league average defense on top of that, that's when we're talking about maybe contendership. but I don't know if the Kings can be league average defensively.
There's going to be some expectations, by the way, too, for Keon Ellis to keep developing the way he is.
Yes.
Because
yes,
let's just say some defensive assignments are going to be in his lap.
Yes. And whether or not Keon's going to continue to start, Kevin Huerter's there. Malik Monk is in my opinion, one of the best players on the team. Just freaking start him. He's not going to win Sixth Man of the Year for some reason, so just start him anyway.
I like him better off the bench for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the team more closely than I do, but I think it's so perfect for Malik. And he got paid, so he's not going to be upset, I think, with the role that you give him, because he already got his bag.
Going to bring up Bronny James, very small, before I get to one other Lakers question that I want to ask. And my curiosity with Bronny, I hear the sigh. I know, I'm sure people are tired of talking about it. It's more from an outside perspective. Because look, I think Bronny just gets a ridiculously bad rap. I think it's unnecessary the amount of people are hating on him just because of who his father is. I understand nepotism. I understand stuff like that. Look, this is the NBA. This is the real world. This is the way it works. Bronny James is a good basketball player, regardless of if he's an NBA player or not. The question that I have is, I also think like the father-son playing together element is dope, whoever it is. Like, it's a really, really cool accomplishment. And it's going to, I think, bring us and give us a really cool moment at some point when they take the floor together for the first time. My question is, how early is that first time? And is this a scenario where that moment is going to happen at the end of a blowout win for the Lakers? Or do you think Redick and LeBron are going to try and find a way early on to get Bronny into a game with LeBron to have that moment?
I think if they are smart, they will look to get it out of the way as quick as possible.
Okay.
And because let's be honest, it is manufactured.
Sure.
I'm not saying that it won't mean anything to LeBron and Bronny. It should mean something to them. But Bronny being on this team is, quite frankly, manufactured in a lot of ways. It will be up to him to show that he was worthy of that pick. But, in any other year, the Lakers likely would have traded that pick or drafted a stash guy, because they've got roster space issues. Like, this was actually a very inconveniently timed year for Bronny James to enter the pros. Like, from the Lakers' perspective of roster flexibility, because, all three of their vet minimum guys exercised their player options. Cam Reddish, Jackson Hayes, and Christian Wood. D'Angelo Russell ended up opting in. So this was not a great year in terms of just practicality to have Bronny there. That's not Bronny's fault, but it's something that has to be negotiated. I feel like the longer this is a potential story, when is it going to happen, the more guys will get sick of being asked about it, the more it becomes something Bronny has to be considering, the more it affects how they have to keep him available on the roster, as opposed to maybe traveling with the South Bay Lakers. I would imagine that they look to get it out of the way ASAP. You don't want to potentially jeopardize a win, because everybody would agree Bronny's not ready. But if you can find that moment within the first 2 or 3 games, get them on the floor together. Hopefully they have a cool moment where one of them sets up the other for a bucket. Right. And then you let Bronny go about what really is necessary for him, which is getting as many reps as possible with South Bay. Like, the reality is, something has to be going either incredibly wrong or spectacularly well for Bronny to be getting even remotely regular minutes with the big club. If he got more than 300 on the season, more than 200, I'd be surprised.
Yeah. Cool. So that makes sense. And the reason why I asked that question is kind of what you said there. The second game of the season for the Kings, I'm not sure if it is for the Lakers. I know the Lakers open up their season against Minnesota, and then the Kings play Minnesota for their season and home opener, right? The second game of the Kings season is at LA. Maybe we see the Bronny moment against the Kings in LA. That's one of the things I'm curious about is if we see it, or if the Lakers try and force it game 1 versus Minnesota. It's going to be interesting to see.
I put it this way. If Locked On Kings listeners and viewers are curious at all about Bronny taking the court with LeBron, I don't think it's out of the question that you could see it in that game against Sacramento. I don't at all.
And I would argue that might be a good thing for the Kings if Bronny's coming on the.
We'll see how long he's out there, but I think it is best overall for the health of the Lakers over the course of 82 games to just get this story done, let LeBron and Bronny enjoy the moment, and then move on.
All right, a real Lakers question for me to wrap things up. Austin Reeves, right? This is the guy that's kind of burst onto the scene as, I think, from the outside perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even more than D'Angelo Russell, certainly more than Rui Hachimura. Like this is the guy that is expected to be the third of the big three in LA with LeBron and AD. There's a lot of hype around Reeves in LA. Clearly a lot of fan support. They've really rallied around this guy. He's had some huge moments as well. From your perspective and the Lakers' perspective of the third piece to a team that's trying to make a deep playoff run, how much faith do you have in Austin Reeves' ability to round out the star power of the Lakers?
He's not there yet. You are absolutely 100% correct that is where the Lakers projected him, and I think counted on him last year to be ready for that role, and he's not, which, to be clear, is not shade against Reeves as a player. He is a legitimately good player. Like he is a quality, at worst, a quality NBA rotation player, like high-end rotation player. He is an absolute steal at his contract for his production. And there are times where he is really, really quite good. But over the course of last year, in the regular season, D'Angelo Russell was the third best player on the Lakers. I think Reeves was better than him in the playoffs. And certainly his first go-around in the playoffs, he was light years better than D'Lo overall. The problem for Reeves and for the Lakers is he is definitely a player that I think can help a team win a championship. He's not yet at the station for being the third best player on a championship team. And the Lakers have, I wouldn't say they've made him untouchable from everything I've heard in terms of trade discussions, but he's been untouchable adjacent. And, for example, if you believe the reporting around last year and their pursuit of DeJounte Murray, Austin Reeves was not the only thing that got in the way of ultimately pulling the trigger on a Murray deal, but he was a big part of it. And Atlanta did not want D'Lo. They wanted Austin. The Lakers did not want to give up Austin that deal on top of whatever else they would have had to surrender. Although I think conceding Reeves might have meant giving up less in terms of draft compensation. And Reeves is not the only guy who's been attached to players around the league that the Lakers have been theoretically interested in. The Lakers have said no. The longer Reeves goes without looking like he is definitively third star quality, especially at a time where there's so much focus on trying to maximize LeBron's window with the Lakers, the more there could be a sense that the Lakers have over-coveted Reeves, whether it's because his contract is such a bargain that you become reticent to give that up, whether it's because they love the story of them discovering Austin Reeves. And look, he's a really likable guy. He is very, very liked in that locker room. I know LeBron and AD genuinely like playing with him a lot. And again, it's not pure hype. Reeves is a good player, but I think the Lakers have been flirting with hanging on to him a little too hard, perhaps at least. This is going to be a season where I think it really starts coming to light. Should the Lakers have maybe, I don't want to say sold when the iron was hot, because I don't expect Reeves to have a bad season or anything like that. It's just they needed to upgrade the roster if they want to be truly serious about a LeBron championship. If you think, for example, DeJounte Murray is a better player than Austin Reeves, or he's better than both Reeves and or D'Lo, there could be some second guessing.
Well, there are a lot of questions for both the Kings and the Lakers to answer this season. I'm going to add one more to it. Will AD finally get a win against Domantas Sabonis during the regular season?
Let's go.
Laker fans are following it too, so it's got a little bit of importance to it. And the good news is we'll get all four looks at it early on in the season.
Yep.
Hopefully AD plays. Hopefully Sabonis is healthy. We want both teams to be healthy and just let the best version of each team clash at each other and have some fun. I'm in the minority here in Sacramento. Laker fans always show up to Kings Lakers in Sacramento. Kings fans typically show up to Kings Lakers in LA. I think the environments are always fun, whether you want to call it a rivalry or not. I'm all for it. And if both of these teams can be great in a Western Conference that is incredibly talented, I think that's only a good thing for both of us. So Locked On Kings, Locked On Lakers will be all over it all season long. Andy, good luck this year, my friend. I have a feeling this won't be the last time we're talking Kings and Lakers in the near future.
Definitely won't be, man. It's always fun.